The day Su Weiren's childhood friend returned, Weiren spent all his time taking him sightseeing. I just smiled, taking off my worthless wedding ring. But on the day Xia Yifeng first arrived, I had dragged myself out of bed, fighting off sleep to make Weiren his favorite breakfast. I was so exhausted that I couldn't stop yawning while making his toast. He laughed, wiping a tear from my eye, and told me to rest. I hugged him, kissed him, and playfully shook his hand. Tonight is my birthday. Have dinner with me, okay? But just as the words left my mouth, Weiren's phone rang with an unknown number. When he answered, a man's sobbing voice came through. Weiren, I'm back. I have something really important. Weiren hung up without hesitation. Meeting my confused look, he gently tapped my cheek. Don't mind it, it's just a spam call, he said. I'd rather focus on how to celebrate with you tonight. But despite his words, he stood me up. I sat alone in the restaurant, calling him repeatedly, but he didn't answer or reply. In the past, Weiren would always tell me if he was working late so I wouldn't worry. Did something happen? An uneasy feeling grew in my chest. Just as I was about to head to his office, he finally called back. Sorry, Jiangfu. I was dealing with a tricky project issue. I'm still handling it. His voice sounded raspy, almost strained. I pushed down my doubts and asked gently, so you won't be back tonight? The work isn't done. I probably won't make it. I sighed in disappointment but remained considerate. You're always so busy. Of course I understand, but I have two rules. No drinking and come home early. Before I could even finish, Weiren hung up in a hurry. He sent me some money, telling me to buy whatever I wanted. I sent back a few sad emojis, then opened my feed. A new post from Xia Yifeng. It was a photo of a slender hand resting on white sheets. I stared at the wedding ring on the left ring finger in that photo. The final thread of my sanity suddenly snapped. My hand shook as I tried to video call Weiren, but he hung up instantly. I clutched the phone, refusing to give up, calling him over and over. After being rejected dozens of times, he finally texted, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you back later. Okay. Almost immediately Yifeng sent me an address. We're here. Want to come over? It was a hospital nearby. Outside, a sudden downpour began. Lightning ripped through the sky, sending a sharp pang through my chest. I took a deep breath. I paid the bill and took a taxi to the hospital. When I found Yifeng's room, I heard sobbing from inside. Just a little more, I was so close. Why did they save me? Through the glass, I saw his bandaged wrist. He was deathly pale, lying on the bed, crying hysterically. Weiren stood there, holding him with pure heartache, as if cradling a treasure he had almost lost. Yifeng clung to Weiren's neck, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't mean to ruin your life, but I really couldn't help it. Please don't leave me. You promised you'd always stay by my side. Weiren's eyes were filled with tenderness as he whispered, Okay, I'll stay. Don't be afraid. He sounded like he was soothing a frightened child. I watched silently, my temples throbbing and my chest aching so much I could barely breathe. With shaking hands, I dialed Weiren's number. I watched him lean down to kiss Yifeng's forehead before stepping aside to answer his phone. He composed himself, answering in a casual, relaxed voice. Hey Jiangfu, I'm at a business dinner and didn't check my phone. Are you done shopping? I'll be home late, I interrupted him, whispering softly. Look behind you. I'm right here. The moment the words left my mouth, his spine went rigid, as if a knife had pierced his back. After a long pause, Weiren slowly turned around, trembling. Jiangfu, why are you here? I looked at his shocked face and smiled gently. Why so scared? Did you do something to betray me? Panic washed over his face as he rushed toward me, the click of my high heels echoing sharply in the quiet corridor. Jiangfu, let me explain. It's not what you think. I watched him silently. He has severe depression and is highly suicidal, Weiren pleaded. He only went abroad back then for treatment. An intense sorrow clouded his face. In this moment, was his pain really out of pity for Yi? Or was he grieving because he only just learned the truth, realizing they had missed their chance? I honestly couldn't tell anymore. Just then, Yifeng's weak voice drifted out. I'm sorry, please don't argue because of me. Tears pooled in his eyes again. Weiren, am I just a burden? Beside him, Yen quickly pulled out a tissue and wiped his tears with practiced ease. When he looked back at me, his eyes held a hint of blame. Jiangfu, go home first. A cold draft blew from the end of the hallway. I looked at the weeping fragile Yifeng. Something inside me was slowly turning to ice. 2 days later, in the early morning, Weiren finally came home. His eyes were completely bloodshot. Hearing the door close, I raised my own red eyes to look at him. So, you finally decided to come back? But Weiren snapped, staring at me. He barked. I already explained it to you. He is sick. Can't you show some compassion? How absurd. I had done absolutely nothing, yet I was being Why are you snapping at me? Weiren rubbed his temples impatiently. That's not important. What's important is Yifeng's wrist. I stared at him, refusing to let go. It is important. It's crucial to me. You're angry because you blame yourself and you blame me. You regret not knowing he was sick, and you regret that my presence means you two can never be together, right? I took a deep breath. Tell me, do you still love him? Weiren stayed silent, His silence said everything. I burst into laughter, tears streaming down my face. Weirin, who are you putting on this show for? Yes, you two are sweethearts, but don't forget, when your family went bankrupt back then, he packed his bags and left the country. I grabbed his arms, screaming at him. Open your eyes. It was me, Jiangfu, who used all my savings to build you up from nothing. Now he's back, and you crawled to him like a dog. Enough. Weirin pursed his lips, pinning my hands down. Stop talking like that. Nothing happened between us. He only left because he was sick. My eyes widened, my temples pounding. So you admit it. You'll regret not waiting for him and marrying me instead. Am I right? Weirin fell silent again. After a long pause, he muttered, I married you, didn't I? Stop making a scene. My world spun, as if a strike of lightning had hit my head. A sharp, suffocating sorrow washed over me. He actually regretted marrying me. Realizing he had lost his temper, Weirin softened his tone. Sorry, Jiangfu, I'm just stressed. I lowered my eyes and whispered, what do you actually want? I just want to take care of him for a while, he said. Sensing how bad that sounded, he quickly added, don't misunderstand. I'm only doing this out of old friendship. It means nothing else. That might have been true, but how he defined friendship was highly debatable. I could somewhat understand his mindset, though. For years, he had resented Yifang for abandoning him. Now that he knew it was all a misunderstanding, his emotional whiplash was severe, and the worse he felt, the deeper his guilt became. But that was no excuse to hurt me. I let out a long, heavy breath. Besides, it's all my fault. Jiangfu, Weirin choked out. He got depressed because he fought his family to stay with me. His voice was actually trembling with tears. My temples throbbed with a splitting headache. I took a breath, clenched my fists, and said slowly, let's divorce. Let's get a divorce right now. Weirin jumped up, staring at me in absolute disbelief. What did you say? He demanded, his anger boiling over. Jiangfu, what on earth are you playing at? I shook my head, keeping my voice steady. Two people in love can never tolerate a third. Weirin, you know that. Can you honestly say you don't love him anymore? After a long silence, Weirin finally sighed, handing me his phone. Look for yourself. We've never crossed the line. I didn't take it, letting out a cold laugh. So, does that prove he's not in your heart? He didn't answer. He clutched his phone so hard his knuckles turned white. He pulled me up, his face dark. Stop acting out, Jiangfu. He is sick. I'm just looking after him. I closed my eyes, but before I could reply, his phone rang. A panicked voice screamed, Weirin, come quick. Yifang is hurting himself again. Weirin froze, looking at me with a complicated expression. I have to go out. I grabbed his arm. I'm coming with you. He stared at me with instant suspicion. I ignored it. You know my temper. If I don't go, none of us will have peace. After a tense silence, Weirin reluctantly agreed. At the hospital, Yifang was curled into a tiny ball on the bed. Bandages wrapped his wrist. He struggled to sit up, eyes red and swollen. Weirin, I didn't mean to. He wept, tears spilling over. I really just couldn't control myself. How could a grown man cry this much? I wanted to laugh, but Weirin fell for it completely. He pulled Yifang into a tight embrace, holding him close. Resting his head on Weirin's shoulder, Yifang closed his eyes and murmured, I only have you left. My parents were furious when they found out I came back for you. They disowned me. Weirin hugged him even tighter, his voice cracking. It's okay. You have me. They looked like a perfect couple who had never been apart. I stared at them, a freezing numbness spreading from my chest to my fingertips. After what felt like an eternity, Yifang sniffled, looking past Weirin to me. Weirin, I want to speak to Jiangfu alone. Weirin finally noticed me. He opened his mouth, but only tucked Yifang's blanket in before standing up to leave. As he passed me, he whispered, he is unstable right now. Don't bully him. I froze, suddenly remembering years ago when a client tried to force drinks on me, and Weirin had charged in like a hero, pouring the entire bottle of wine over that man's head. Even as we were being dragged out, he screamed, as long as I'm here, nobody touches Jiangfu. Now, he was telling me not to bully another man. See, I've always had a place in his heart. Yifang sneered, raising his chin with a smug, triumphant smile. I took a deep breath, keeping my emotions in check. But so what? I'm his wife now, not you. Yifang's face fell for a second, but then he smirked again. You think a few years can replace me? Watch closely, Jiangfu. Watch how I take him back. The next second, he threw himself off the bed with a thud. I'm sorry, Jiangfu. He sobbed, his eyes filled with tears as he whimpered. It is my fault. I shouldn't have bothered you. I stared at him and he stared back. We both knew we weren't the leads in this show. Sure enough, the exact moment he cried out, Su Weirin burst into view. She looked in shock at Xia Yifan on the floor, then glared at me. Her voice cracked. Jiangfu, don't be so cruel. She scooped him into her arms so gently, as if he were made of glass. When her eyes turned to me, though they were sharp with blame, do you even care that Yifang is sick? My burning anger and grief suddenly went cold. I realized that falling out of love happens in a single heartbeat. I locked eyes with Xia Yifang and whispered, Fine, I will watch over her. If he wants a broken marriage, he can have it. Back home, Su Warren sat on the couch, lighting a cigarette. The thick smoke blurred her face and our locked gaze. Finally, she found the nerve to speak. You saw him. He is in a bad place. Why can't you just be more understanding instead of always picking on him? She slid a bank card across the table. Take this. Buy what you want. Go travel. I am not divorcing you. So, drop it. I am just helping him through this. It won't affect our marriage. I stared at the card, then looked up calmly. More than half of this money was earned by me. Isn't it a bit pathetic for you to play the generous savior with my cash? Even after her family went bankrupt, her spoiled princess attitude remained. Whenever a client annoyed her, she would storm out, leaving me to clean up her endless mess. Frankly, without me, she would be nothing. I did not say it out loud, but she knew it. She frowned, turning her head away. If venting makes you feel better, I will take the blame. My voice remained flat. You absolutely deserve to take it. But my calm composure only infuriated her. Her eyes flared with rage as she snapped. Jiang Fu, do not push your luck. What are you trying to prove here? That everyone at the firm only respects you as the boss. I let out a bitter laugh. Su Wei, she glared back, completely unapologetic. We have been together for 14 years, since we were 19. In all that time, I've never done you wrong. How could you forget that? Everything you have today, I built with you, suffering through the hardest times by your side. From the sweet love of our youth to this bitter, exhausted silence. 14 long years. I did my absolute best for this relationship, and for this marriage. I fought for us, but love is like a tug. I pulled with everything I had, but you just let go of the rope, leaving me shattered. Since I was brave enough to love her, I will be brave enough to walk away. I swallowed my tears, looking right into her eyes. I made sure she heard every single word. Su Warren, I loved you with everything I had, but I am empty now. I want a divorce. Sensing I was entirely serious, she panicked, suddenly trying to play the perfect wife again. Every single morning, breakfast was waiting. She made sure none of it was spicy, laying out all of my favorite dishes. As I walked downstairs, she offered a warm, bright smile. Morning, Jiang Fu. Come eat. She acted so casual, as if Xia Yifen had never returned and our marriage was completely unbroken. She swept the betrayal under the rug, expecting me to just move on. But she forgot that once a glass is shattered, you can never glue the pieces back together. Around 9 that night, her phone started buzzing repeatedly. She ignored it at first, but finally stood up. To answer it on the balcony, she walked back in, looking highly panicked. Jiang Fu Yifang is in bad shape. I waved my hand, cutting her off. Save it. I do not care. Her gentle act vanished instantly. Why are you being so petty? A man's life is at stake. There is no need to argue. I honestly do not care, I repeated calmly. She kicked the coffee table, pointing a furious finger at me. Let us see how long you can play this stubborn game. I watched her rush out the door. I felt absolutely nothing. 20 minutes later, Xia Yifen sent me a photo. He was resting his head on her shoulder while she held his hand, looking deeply worried. Her wedding ring was gone. He texted, "The lighting is bad, but enjoy." I replied, "What is this supposed to prove?" He just sent a smug emoji. "Just wait and see," he replied. The next morning I noticed a pair of men's slippers in the entryway. I recognized his style instantly. Walking into the kitchen, I saw Su Warren cooking, while he hovered right behind her like a lost puppy. "Almost ready," she hummed. "We can eat in a minute." Xia Yifang smiled, leaning in with a whiny, childish tone. "Ranron, am I being too much of a burden?" She gave him a doting look. "You could never burden me." He wrapped his arms around her waist, just as she noticed me entering. Instead of letting go, she held him even tighter. I put on my coat and walked right out the door without looking back. Surprisingly, she chased after me. "Jiang Fu, does this not hurt you?" Her voice cracked. "Sing us. Is there no pain?" I realized what she wanted. She was desperately trying to make me jealous. I actually laughed. Why would I care? Stop playing games and go back inside to nurse your boyfriend. He clearly needs you. She grabbed my wrist, her gaze freezing cold. "Jiang Fu, you are pushing me into his arms." This time, I burst out laughing. "My dear wife, do I need to remind you? You've brought him here. You insisted on playing nurse." She suddenly soft, pleading, "Just come back inside. Let us work this out, okay? He will not get in the way of our marriage. I promise you." She squeezed my hand, looking entirely sincere. It was pathetic. "Your promises are completely worthless to me now." I pulled my hand back, cold and resolute. "The only thing left for us to discuss is the division of our assets and our divorce," she snapped. Realizing her begging failed, her eyes turned bloodshot and vicious. "Jiang Fu, if you divorce me, you will regret this for the rest of your life." I glanced past her shoulder at Xia Yifen, who was grinning triumphantly. I looked back at her. I doubt that. Who wants a cheater? Two-timing traitor. The next day I returned to find the locks changed. My fingerprint access was deleted. Before I could call a locksmith, the door swung open and Xia Yifeng stepped out with a smug grin. "Sorry, Jiang Fu, Ranran said you do not live here anymore." I stared at him. "You changed the codes." He chuckled, Oozing arrogance, she told me I could do whatever I wanted. What do you think? I scoffed. Are you an idiot? This is my property. Keep playing games and I will call the police to throw you out. You can sleep in a cell. He paused, then smirked. Do you know what we did last night? That work suit you always iron for. It felt incredibly soft. It felt even better when I tore it off her. He tugged his collar to show a bite mark. Guess what else we did? I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, looking past him at the dead, falling autumn leaves outside. It felt as if my entire world had turned into a barren wasteland overnight. I turned back, staring cold and hard at his smug face. Do you honestly think she loves you? I asked, looking into his eyes. True love starts with respect. If she cared about you, she wouldn't make you a shameful secret or drag you into an immoral affair. She is using you, and you are too blind to see it. Instead, you boast about it like it is a prize. I watched the color drain from his face and let out a soft laugh. You are honestly pathetic. His fists clenched, eyes burning with pure hatred. Jiang Fu, who do you think you are lecturing? If I had never gone abroad, you would have never stood a chance. I watched his eyes turn red, leaning in closer. You are wrong. She would never have married you. Back then, she was a useless heiress and you were a deadbeat. Neither of you had anything to offer each other. You only wanted a free ride. All she ever loved was your cheap, empty face. His expression twisted into something monstrous. He lunged forward, screaming, Jiang Fu, you just wait. I am going to prove to you exactly who she really loves. You are finished. Early the next morning, the board called. President Jiang, there is an emergency. Get to the office. When I arrived, a thick stack of files was slammed in front of me. Su Weron sat at the head of the table. Jiang Fu, you have disappointed us all. How could you jeopardize our business for your petty grudges? I opened the file. The accounts looked clean at first glance, but a closer look revealed massive fraud. Even our product materials had been swapped with cheap fakes. In our industry, this kind of scandal was absolutely fatal. If anyone investigated these forged documents would send me straight to prison. I read through every single page before looking up at Su Weron. Do you really want to destroy me this badly? She stared back, her expression completely heartless. Yu Fang lost everything because of me. You had no right to hurt him, Jiang Fu. You only care about status, but he only cares about me. She was framing me to appease her lover. I let out a dry, hollow laugh, staring at my wife. What did I ever mean to you? She paused, then sighed. But he is sick, right? He is unstable, so we must all ruin our lives to keep him happy. I tossed the fraudulent files onto the glass table, my voice completely empty. I did not forge these, and I welcome any investigation. Furthermore, I am done. We are divorced. She stared at me, her eyes icy and condescending. Do you only learn to be obedient when you lose everything? She scoffed, shaking her head. My goal is simply to kick you out. The truth of these files does not matter as long as the board believes them. I stared at her, tears finally spilling over. My heart shattered. 14 years of building a life together, of sleepless nights and shared dreams. How could cutting that tie not hurt? She sighed, walking over to grab my hand. Jiang Fu, stop fighting me. Just behave, and we can go back to how things were. Her tone softened, shaking my hand like she used to. You hate seeing me sad, right? But my tears were not for her. I was mourning the tragedy of two people who once loved each other turning into bitter enemies. We were completely broken. A day later, in the dead of night, her name suddenly blew up across social media. President of Su Group, accused of cheating and forcing her husband out. President Su suspected of forging corporate files to frame her spouse. A massive influencer had posted a detail at midnight, exposing the toxic affair between me, my wife, and her ex Xia Yi. The post detailed how Xia Yifeng dumped her the second her family went bankrupt, and how I spent years writing proposals, securing clients, and rebuilding her empire from the ashes. It exposed how she framed me with fake documents just to please her toxic lover. At first, the public was skeptical, but as leaked photos, intimate videos, and incriminating audio clips dropped, the scandal became undeniable. The final blow came when the police summoned her for corporate fraud. Even though she was released and sent home, the internet was already on fire. When I unlocked the front door, having reset the passcode, I found her sitting alone in the dark. Her clothes were wrinkled, her face pale, surrounded by shattered glass. She looked up at me, whispering, "Why did you do this?" He tossed the bottle aside and looked up, his eyes suddenly rimming with red. "Jiang Fu, you poured your heart into this company too." I leaned down and gently brushed some dust off his suit. "I've always been the type to settle every score. You pushed me too far, so of course I was going to get even. And aren't you the same? I counted when you framed me just to please him. You didn't care whether I lived or died." Su Weron's expression soured. "But I can give you a life of luxury." I pulled out the equity transfer agreement I'd prepared earlier and slid it across the table. "But I was never a trophy boy who needed to live off your charity." "Sign it," I said. Su Weron snapped. "I will never sign it. In your dreams." I grabbed his hand and pressed it against my left cheek. "We're in. You know my method's better than anyone, don't you?" After all, you used to be my closest lover. He stared at me blankly for a long time, a storm of emotions churning in his eyes. For a split second, I thought he was going to cry. I let out a bitter laugh. It's sad how two people who loved each other so deeply end up tearing each other apart, leaving nothing but a total mess. Soo-Werin, I'm giving you two choices. Sign this agreement, or we divorce. In the end, he chose to sign. He gripped my hand tightly. His voice cracked and raw. I messed up. I made you sad, but I promise it'll never happen again. I knew exactly what was going through his head. He thought that as long as I agreed to stay, I would never actually leave him. But he was dead wrong. I wanted the shares, and I wanted the company. As for Soo, whoever wanted him could have him. The moment we finished notarizing the papers, I called an emergency board meeting. I had copied years' worth of reports detailing every single one of his professional blunders, and distributed them to everyone from the board members right down to the junior staff. Not a single person was spared. When Soo-Werin finally saw the file, he was utterly stunned. He stared at me as if I were a total stranger. You planned all of this, didn't you? You never wanted to make up, you just played me to get my signature. I gave him a cold, faint smile. The plan was real, yes, but I never said a word about getting back together. We're all selfish, and I'm no exception. Your sheer incompetence is actively hurting the business, so I have to replace you. With bloodshot eyes, he stared at me. Do you really not care about me anymore? The question was as desperate as it was pathetic. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I turned to the board and addressed them with absolute clarity. Right now, I hold 35% of the company's shares, leaving aside the fact that my track record far outshines the former CEO. You all need to ask yourselves, can this company really afford to keep a disgraced president at the helm? The shareholders exchanged uneasy glances, and the room fell dead silent. I pressed on. In the business world, profit is everything. Instead of worrying about when the next scandal will blow up in our faces, we should make a clean break. That is how we protect our growth. Don't you agree? At this, the room erupted into quiet murmurs, but nobody dared to object. Working closely with key directors, I officially ousted Soo-Werin and claimed the top spot. Leveraging my 35% stake, I was more than ready. After all, when we first built this company, I was the one fighting right alongside him. I was the strategist guiding his every step. I knew him better than anyone, down to his exact strengths and fatal flaws. Yet he chose to ignore me. I built that stage and let him stand on it. Now, I am simply reclaiming what was always mine. After that day, Soo-Werin seemed to vanish from the face of the earth. Then, a month later, my phone rang. Jiang-Fu, I'll sign the divorce papers, but I need to see you one last time. I'm downstairs. When I stepped outside, he was standing under a street lamp, the dim yellow glow washing over him. He looked incredibly small and lonely. He'd lost a lot of weight in just 4 weeks. Though he had clearly tried to dress up, he couldn't hide how utterly exhausted he was. The wedding band was still on his ring finger. Jiang-Fu, how are you? I didn't answer. I'm miserable, he choked out. I never thought we would actually end up like this. I replied coldly. You only acted like that because I loved you for 14 years. You thought you owned me, which is why you felt so free to run back to Xia Yi. Pleased, he suddenly grabbed my sleeve, begging me. Jiang-Fu, I don't want to divorce you. How can you just stop loving me? I found it almost laughable. My love for him didn't vanish overnight. It was slowly chipped away, piece by piece, every single time he chose Xia Yifang over me. Why not just sign the papers? I spat, letting the venom show. Then you two can finally be together. I don't want to be with him, he yelled, before his voice instantly dropped. I told you, he's sick. I only wanted to look after him for a bit out of pity. I had already lost count of how many times he had used Xia Yifeng's illness as a shield. It was as if having depression meant the entire world had to bow down to his needs. Watching him stand there, drowning in guilt and pain, I let out a soft laugh. So what? Soo-Werin, let's get one thing straight. I am not his father, and I am certainly not yours. I have zero obligation to unconditionally coddling him. His depression is he the only person on earth who's ever struggled. In the early days of our startup, you had a massive ego. When clients made things difficult, you'd throw a tantrum and walk out. Whenever you threw a fit and quit, I had to swallow my pride and go begging for clients. When they forced me to choke down bottle after bottle of hard liquor, where were you? When they forced me to kneel and apologize, where were you? When I collapsed and almost died from pure exhaustion, where were you? Tell me, Soo-Werin, how do you have the nerve to ask for my forgiveness? Soo-Werin, he stared at me in absolute shock. His eyes looked like a dark, bottomless lake, drowning in wet despair and agony. Jiang-Fu, I had no idea you suffered so much. He reached out, trying to grab my hand, but then pulled back in fear. When did you collapse? When? I laughed bitterly. Because of the very first client you offended. To clean up your mess, I forced down 3 bottles of hard liquor just to apologize. My stomach started bleeding, and I passed out. And what were you doing? You claimed you were too exhausted and jetted off to another country on a vacation. But you actually went to visit Xia Yifeng, didn't you? Soo-Werin's face drained of color. You knew. I let out a cold laugh. You always beg me for another chance. But I already gave you 1,000 chances. In the end, he signed the papers, but he still stared at me stubbornly. Jiangfu, I know I was awful, but I want to make it up to you. I want to be by your side forever. I really do love you. Honestly, he was downright obsessive about certain things. He began lingering around me every day. He didn't disrupt my schedule, but every morning, he'd leave a bouquet of my favorite flowers at my door, along with my favorite snacks and tea. At first, I ignored it all, assuming he'd eventually get tired and move on. But he clung to me like a shadow I couldn't shake, sick and tired of his presence. I finally lost my patience and confronted him. Su Werin, if you want to play the martyr to make yourself feel better, go ahead. But stop dragging me into your drama. The only thing I feel for you now is pure disgust. Where do you get the nerve to think I'd ever take back someone as filthy as you? The cool night breeze blew gently across us. After a painful silence, he finally spoke, his voice cracking with a sharp sob. Jiangfu, do you really hate me that much? I didn't say a word. I just turned and walked toward my door. His hoarse voice drifted after me. I didn't deserve you. Take care of yourself, Jiangfu. After that night, Su Werin completely vanished from my life. But then, out of nowhere, Xia Yifeng called, Jiangfu, how can you be so cruel? Werin is obsessed with making amends to you. He won't even look at me. I scoffed over the phone. Oh, what's wrong? Is your depression cured now? Jiangfu, he and I are going to be happy together. His voice shrilled with rising hysteria. I had zero desire to listen to his breakdown. So I hung up. Yet, he kept spamming my inbox with daily videos. In them, Su Werin looked utterly broken and wasted, clutching our old photos, sobbing and screaming my name over and over. I felt absolutely nothing. I blocked his number on the spot. A month later, I crossed paths with Xia Yi. He had dark hollows under his eyes and looked incredibly gaunt. The moment he saw me, he glared with pure hatred. How can you be so heartless? You stripped him of everything. How is he supposed to survive? I stared at him, letting the silence stretch before replying. Before you do terrible things, you should consider the consequences. Nothing in this world is free. That goes for business, and it goes for love. Such is the meaning.